The auctioneer's voice cut through the dusty Wyoming air like a knife. "Fresh as a spring calf," he cackled, pointing at the young woman kneeling on the wooden platform. She was barefoot, shackled, her dress stained dark with blood from the knees down. In her arms, a newborn whimpered against her chest, too quiet for a child just days old. Men laughed, shouting numbers as if bidding on livestock instead of human flesh. I'd seen this scene before in my nightmares, the same scene that had claimed my sister Eliza 5 years ago. My hand settled on the revolver at my hip as I stepped forward. $300, I said, my voice slicing through their jeers. The crowd fell silent, turning to stare. The woman didn't look up, but I saw her shoulders stiffen, preparing for whatever new horror awaited. She couldn't know yet that I wasn't there to own her. I was there to give her the one thing that had been stolen from my sister, a choice. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. The auctioneer's voice cut through the dusty Wyoming air like a knife. "Fresh as a spring calf," he cackled, pointing at the young woman kneeling on the wooden platform. She was barefoot, shackled, her dress stained dark with blood from the knees down. In her arms, a newborn whimpered against her chest. Too quiet for a child just days old. Men laughed, shouting numbers as if bidding on livestock instead of human flesh. I'd seen this scene before in my nightmares, the same scene that had claimed my sister Eliza 5 years ago. My hand settled on the revolver at my hip as I stepped forward. $300, I said, my voice slicing through their jeers. The crowd fell silent, turning to stare. The woman didn't look up, but I saw her shoulders stiffen, preparing for whatever new horror awaited. $300, I repeated, louder this time. The auctioneer squinted at me. "Sir, I reckon you heard wrong. It's just a woman and a squalling brat." "I heard just fine," I replied, climbing the steps to the platform, my boots landing heavy on the wood. "What's your intent with the merchandise?" someone shouted from the crowd. I looked directly at the heckler. "To give her a bed, to let her sleep, that's all." "Hell of a price for charity," another muttered. My fingers brushed the polished handle of my revolver. "Anyone want to top it?" No one spoke. No one moved. "No," I said softly. "Then shut your mouth." The auctioneer banged his gavel. "Sold!" I knelt beside the woman, pulling a knife from my boot to cut the chain from her ankle. It fell with a final, heavy clank. I extended my hand, but she didn't take it. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Rest," I answered. "Sleep. Then we'll talk like people do." She stared at me for a long moment, then forced herself to her feet, swaying slightly. The baby mewled softly against her chest. "Do you have a name?" I asked. She hesitated, as if the question itself might be a trap. "Sarah," she finally said. "Hope Morgan," I replied. "This way." As we left the auction block, I felt the weight of the town's stairs on our backs. Sarah walked beside me, barefoot and blood-streaked, but there was a strength in her spine that reminded me of steel forged in fire. "My ranch is about 5 miles north," I told her as we approached my horse. "Can you ride?" She nodded once, her eyes wary but determined. As I helped her onto my Appaloosa, I noticed her hands, calloused and scarred. Not the hands of someone who'd been coddled or protected. She'd fought to survive long before I'd found her on that auction block. "Why?" Sarah asked softly from behind me as we left Lonesome Creek behind. I didn't turn around. Because some debts can never be repaid, I answered. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. Days stretched into weeks at the ranch. Sarah remained mostly in the cabin, venturing out only to collect water or hang the baby's few clothes to dry. I brought her meals, books, anything I thought might make her confinement more bearable. The baby grew stronger, his cries becoming more insistent. Sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking, Sarah would smile at him, a fleeting, precious thing that transformed her face entirely. One evening, I returned from town with news that set my teeth on edge. There were men asking questions, I told Sarah as I set a basket of provisions on her table. Strangers. Describing a woman and baby. Sarah's face went still, her hands automatically reaching for the infant in his cradle. What did they look like? She asked, her voice carefully controlled. One tall, with a beard, one shorter, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. She closed her eyes briefly. Jenkins and Morrow, Barrett's trackers. I leaned against the door frame, keeping my distance as always. They're staying at the saloon, asked if anyone had seen a dark-haired woman with a newborn. A bitter laugh escaped her. Yes, I stole myself, and my son. I watched her, the way fear and defiance warred across her features. How did you escape? I asked finally. Sarah was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, there was a fire, she said softly. In the barn, where they kept us, the women who were breeding stock. Her voice hardened on the last words. I was already in labor when it started. Everyone was running, shouting. No one noticed when I slipped away in the chaos. She looked down at her baby, sleeping peacefully. I gave birth in the woods, alone, cut the cord with a rock, wrapped him in my torn petticoat. We walked for 3 days before Barrett's men caught up with us near Lonesome Creek. You're very brave, I said simply. She looked up sharply. Brave? No. Just unwilling to let my son be sold like cattle the moment he could work. I nodded, understanding all too well. We need to be ready when they find this place. When, she corrected, when they find this place. I won't let them take you, I promised. Sarah's eyes met mine, assessing. Why do you care so much? Hope Morgan, what am I to you? I could have lied, but something in her steady gaze demanded honesty. 5 years ago, my sister Eliza disappeared. She was traveling to meet her fiancé in Colorado Territory. Her stagecoach was attacked. I took a deep breath. I've been looking for her ever since. All trails led to a man named Silas Barrett. Sarah's face paled. Your sister. I found her grave last winter. I continued quietly. Unmarked, except for the shawl I'd given her. That's why I was at the auction. I couldn't save Eliza. But maybe I could save you. Sarah was silent for a long moment. Then she stood and crossed to a bundle beneath her cot. From it, she withdrew something small and silver, a locket on a broken chain. I found this at Barrett's compound, she said, holding it out to me. Inside is a small braid of hair and the name Eliza Morgan. Dawn came cold and clear, frost rimming the windows like delicate lace. I rose before the sun, checking and loading every weapon I owned, the Winchester, my father's old Navy Colt, the shotgun that hung above the fireplace. I had a feeling we'd need them all before long. Sarah emerged from her cabin as I was saddling my horse, her baby wrapped snugly against her chest. Where are you going? She asked, her breath fogging in the chill air. To see a friend, I replied, tightening the cinch. Someone who might help us. She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. "Can they be trusted?" "With my life," I assured her, "and more importantly, with yours." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful. Barrett's men could be watching the trails." "I know these mountains better than they ever will," I said. "Keep the shotgun close, and if anyone comes, I know how to use it," she interrupted, her expression grim. The trail to Nathan Blackwood's place wound through dense pine forests and rocky ravines, difficult terrain for those unfamiliar with the area. His cabin was nestled in a hidden valley, surrounded by aspen trees that trembled gold in the autumn light. Nathan was waiting on the porch, rifle across his knees. At 70, he was still as sharp-eyed and dangerous as a mountain cat. "Figured you'd be showing up soon," he said by way of greeting. "Heard there was trouble in town." Inside, Nathan poured coffee, adding a splash of whiskey to each cup. I told him everything, about Sarah and her baby, about the auction, about the connection to Eliza and the locket Sarah had brought with her. Nathan listened without interrupting, his weathered face growing harder with each word. "Barrett's operation is bigger than you know," he said finally. "It's not just women he trades in, it's children too. Boys for the mines, girls for—" He didn't finish the sentence. From a loose floorboard near the hearth, he retrieved a leather-bound ledger. "One of Barrett's men lost this in a poker game last year," he explained. "Inside are names, dates, amounts, a record of human beings bought and sold like livestock. This is evidence," I breathed, "enough to hang him. Only if we can get it to someone willing to act on it," Nathan cautioned. "Someone beyond Barrett's reach." "Judge Isaac Hammond in Denver," I suggested. "He's been crusading against trafficking for years." Nathan nodded. "I know a place for the woman and child, Widow Chen's farm near the Canadian border. She helps women escape." "That's at least a week's journey," I protested. "Which is why you won't be taking them," Nathan said. "I will. You'll be creating a diversion, heading to Denver with the ledger, while I take the woman and child north." Before departing, Nathan handed me a small wooden box containing a derringer. "For the woman," he said. "Every soul deserves the means to defend their freedom." I returned to find Barrett's men approaching my ranch. I galloped toward them, Winchester raised, firing a warning shot. Sarah appeared in the doorway, shotgun in hand, as I took cover behind the water trough. "Get back inside," I ordered, returning fire as Barrett's men retreated behind the barn. "Now, Sarah," I shouted after reloading. She ran for my horse. Elijah clutched against her chest. As one of Barrett's men took aim, my shot caught him in the shoulder. Sarah galloped toward the trees as I provided covering fire before making my own escape. We met Nathan at the hidden valley where 3 creeks converged. As Sarah prepared to depart north with him, she touched my face briefly. "Be careful," she whispered. "Elijah needs to know the man who saved his mother." The journey to Denver was a race against both time and Barrett's growing awareness of my intentions. I rode hard, stopping only to rest my horse and catch a few hours of fitful sleep beneath the stars. The ledger remained secure inside my coat, its weight a constant reminder of what was at stake. 2 days into my journey, I realized I was being followed. I altered my route, taking paths no sane man would follow, across swollen rivers and along treacherous ridgelines where a single misstep meant death. On the 3rd night, camped in a narrow ravine. I heard the soft click of a hammer being cocked. I rolled instantly from my bedroll as a shot split the darkness. "Morgan," I fired back, aiming toward the muzzle flash, and was rewarded with a cry of pain, taking only my saddlebags and the precious ledger. I fled on foot into the rocky labyrinth of the ravine. Fortune favored me at midday when I encountered a mail carrier resting his mount by a stream. The young man was reluctant to part with his horse until I pressed a gold piece into his hand and mentioned Judge Hammond's name. By nightfall, the lights of Denver glimmered in the distance. I stabled the horse at a small livery on the outskirts, then made my way on foot to Judge Hammond's residence. Hammond, a tall man with iron-gray hair and piercing blue eyes, led me to a study lined with law books. "You're taking a terrible risk coming here," he said. "Barrett has men all over Denver." I removed the ledger from inside my coat. As Hammond read, his expression hardened, disgust and righteous anger flashing across his features. "My God," he whispered, "the names in here, senators, judges, businessmen. This goes higher than I ever imagined." Hammond led me through a secret passage to a small newspaper office where a woman named Martha operated a private telegraph line. I composed a coded message to Nathan: "Evidence secured, witness needed, safe passage guaranteed." For 3 days, we worked from Hammond's fortified study, compiling evidence and preparing legal documents. On the 4th day, Martha burst in with news that Barrett himself was in Denver with at least 20 men, surrounding the courthouse and moving toward Hammond's home. As Barrett's men broke through the front door, a voice bellowed, "Demands for the ledger." Hammond signaled with a lantern toward marshals waiting across the street. Then, unexpectedly, a woman's voice called from the hallway. "Hope! Hope Morgan! It's me, Eliza." My heart stopped. It couldn't be. Eliza was dead. I'd found her grave myself. "Don't listen," Hammond warned. "It's a trick." The voice continued, cracking with emotion. "Help me, brother, please." Every instinct screamed deception, yet the voice sounded so much like hers. Then I remembered Sarah's words about faith and knew with certainty that my sister was gone. "My sister is dead," I called out. "And you desecrate her memory with this charade." A man's laughter echoed in the hallway. "Worth a try," he said. "Bring in the real one." The door splintered under assault. I fired through the weakened wood, but more men pushed forward. Through the chaos emerged a tall figure, Silas Barrett himself. "Judge Hammond," he said pleasantly, "and you must be Hope Morgan." He gestured, and his men dragged a bound and gagged figure into the room, Sarah. My blood ran cold. "How?" "Your friend Nathan put up quite a fight," Barrett said conversationally. "The baby, I'm afraid, I have no information about." Relief flooded through me at the thought that Elijah might be safe. Sarah's eyes met mine, filled not with fear, but with fury. "Now," Barrett continued, "the ledger, if you please, and perhaps we can arrange a trade. This woman's life for your silence." Everything happened at once. Barrett's men raised their weapons. I launched myself toward Sarah, desperate to shield her. Hammond threw himself behind his desk. Before a single shot could be fired, the window behind Barrett exploded inward. Nathan Blackwood crashed through in a shower of glass, bloodied, but very much alive, a revolver in each hand. "Sorry I'm late," he growled. Firing both weapons simultaneously, Barrett's men turned in confusion, caught between multiple threats. I tackled Sarah to the floor, covering her body with mine as gunfire erupted from all sides. When I looked up again, the room was transformed. Several of Barrett's men lay dead or wounded. Hammond had emerged from behind his desk, his revolver smoking, and Barrett was gone. "He ran," Nathan spat, "down the back stairs." I leapt to my feet, cutting Sarah's bonds with my knife. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, pulling the gag from her mouth. "Elijah is safe," she gasped. "I made Nathan take him to the safe house first before coming back for me." "Stay here," I ordered, turning to the door. "Barrett's mine." Outside, chaos reigned. Marshals battled Barrett's remaining men in the street. Through the confusion, I caught a glimpse of Barrett limping toward the stables, his silver-headed cane flashing in the lantern light. I caught him as he was mounting, dragging him backward to the ground. The horse bolted, leaving us alone in the shadowed stable. Barrett scrambled away, reaching for a hidden derringer in his coat. I kicked it from his hand before he could fire. "It's over, Barrett," I said, my revolver aimed at his chest. He laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Do you really think killing me will end anything? The business is too profitable, the demand too great." "Maybe," I acknowledged, "but I'm not after your business. I'm after you." Barrett's eyes narrowed. "Because of your sister," he chuckled. "Eliza Morgan. I remember her. Spirited girl. Fought harder than most." White-hot rage surged through me. I pressed the revolver against his forehead. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't pull this trigger." "Because you want to know," Barrett said softly. "You want to know what happened to her, whether she suffered at the end." For one terrible moment, I wavered. Then I remembered Sarah's words about Eliza helping others, and I knew what my sister would want. "No," I said, stepping back. "I don't need your version of my sister's story." Barrett lunged for me, reaching for my gun hand. We grappled in the straw. Barrett fighting with desperate strength, he managed to twist the revolver toward my chest, his finger finding the trigger. A shot rang out. Barrett stiffened, his eyes widening in surprise. A small, neat hole had appeared in the center of his forehead. He collapsed atop me. Suddenly, nothing more than dead weight, I looked up to see Sarah standing in the stable doorway, Nathan's derringer smoking in her hand. "He was going to kill you," she said simply. I nodded, unable to speak through the tightness in my throat. 5 years of searching, of rage and grief and guilt, crystallized in this single moment of justice, delivered not by my hand, but by one of the women Barrett had sought to destroy. Sarah helped me to my feet. Outside, the sounds of fighting had died away. "Is it over?" she asked softly. I looked down at Barrett's body, then back at her. "His part is the rest." I shook my head. "There will be trials, testimony, but the women like you have your stories now. Stories they can no longer silence," she finished, her voice gaining strength. The trials began in the spring, when the mountain passes had cleared enough for witnesses to travel to Denver. Judge Hammond presided, his courtroom packed daily with spectators, journalists, and the families of Barrett's victims. Sarah testified first, her voice steady as she recounted the horrors of Barrett's breeding farm. She spoke of Eliza, of Faith, as she had known her, and how one woman's courage had inspired others to resist in whatever small ways they could. Other women came forward as the trials progressed. Some I recognized from Nathan's descriptions, women who had escaped north, who had built new lives beyond Barrett's reach. They returned now, facing their fears to ensure justice was done. The ledger proved as damning as Hammond had predicted. Names were named, connections exposed. Powerful men fell from grace, their reputations destroyed by evidence they couldn't deny or explain away. Through it all, I remained in Denver, providing what testimony I could while helping Hammond's marshals dismantle what remained of Barrett's network. Each raid freed more women and children. Each arrest brought more of Barrett's associates to justice. Nathan had recovered from his wounds and returned to his mountain cabin, but not before ensuring that Elijah was safely reunited with Sarah. The boy had grown in the month since I'd last seen him, stronger, more alert, his eyes following his mother with complete trust. "He looks like you," I told Sarah one evening as we sat on the porch of the small house Hammond had arranged for her near the courthouse. She smiled, the expression transforming her face. "Poor child, if that's true," she joked. "Though I hope he has my stubbornness. He'll need it in this world." "What will you do when the trials are finished?" I asked. The question that had been weighing on me for weeks. Sarah looked out at the sunset painting the distant mountains gold. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "Judge Hammond has offered to help me claim a homestead." "You could go north?" I suggested, though the words cost me something to say. "Canada." "A completely fresh start." She turned to study my face. "Is that what you think I should do?" I met her gaze steadily. "I think you should do whatever brings you peace." "And what about you, Hope Morgan? What will bring you peace now that your search is over?" It was a question I'd been asking myself since Barrett's death. "I don't know," I admitted. "My ranch is still there, though it needs rebuilding after Barrett's men finished with it. It's good land," Sarah said. "Room to grow things. Room for a child to run." One day, Judge Hammond called me to his office. "I have something for you," he said, sliding a document across his desk. "The deed to Barrett's main property. The court has awarded it to you as compensation for damages." "I don't want anything that was his," I said immediately. Hammond smiled understanding. "Which is why I've taken the liberty of suggesting an alternative use for the land." He handed me plans for converting Barrett's compound into a home for women and children escaping abuse and trafficking. "They need someone to oversee it," Hammond explained. "Someone who understands both the evil these women have escaped and the courage it takes to rebuild a life." "Sarah," I said immediately. "She would be perfect." That night, I told Sarah about Hammond's proposal, her eyes lit with purpose. "Yes," she said. "But what about us?" 30 miles isn't so far," I said. "Not for a man with a good horse and a good reason to ride." Sarah considered this thoughtfully. 2 homes, for people who never thought they'd have even one. There's justice in that, too. I took her hand, bringing it gently to my lips. "There's more than justice," I said softly. "There's hope." 2 years passed, like seasons changing in the mountains, sometimes harsh, sometimes gentle, but always moving forward. Barrett's former compound, now called Eliza's Haven, had transformed beyond recognition, where there had once been barred windows and locked doors. Now stood open porches and flowering gardens. Sarah divided her time between the Haven and my ranch. Our ranch now, though we still maintained separate bedrooms. Some wounds took longer to heal than others, and I had promised her all the time she needed. Elijah grew from an infant to a sturdy toddler, then to a curious little boy who followed me everywhere. He called me Hope at first, then Papa Hope, and finally just Papa. A transition that happened so naturally neither Sarah nor I remarked upon it until it had already become truth. On a crisp autumn day, Sarah and I rode to the small cemetery on the hill overlooking our property. 2 graves stood side by side, one for my sister Eliza, though her body lay elsewhere, one for Sarah's mother, who had died in childbirth at Barrett's compound. "I told a new girl about your sister yesterday," Sarah said quietly. "How she taught women to read in secret. How she kept hope alive in the darkest place." I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. Eliza would have liked that. Sarah stood, brushing dirt from her skirts. She would have liked seeing women rebuild their lives. She would have, I agreed, just as she would have liked seeing you become its heart. Sarah smiled, taking my hand. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the wind stir the golden leaves, listening to Elijah's laughter in the distance. "I've been thinking," Sarah said finally, "about us." I glanced at her, careful to keep my expression neutral despite my quickening heartbeat. "Oh? It's been 2 years," she continued. 2 years of healing, of building something new from the ashes of what was broken. She turned to face me fully. "I think I'm ready now. If you still want—" "I do," I said simply. "I have from the moment I saw you stand, despite everything done to you." She smiled. "Then ask me properly. Hope Morgan." I dropped to one knee, taking her hand in mine. "Sarah, will you marry me? Not because you need protection or I need redemption, but because we choose each other, freely and completely?" "Yes," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Yes, I will." As we walked back down the hill toward home, Sarah observed, "I never thought the worst day of my life would lead me here." I reached over, taking her hand. "You were always human, Sarah, always valuable, always worthy, even when the world tried to tell you otherwise." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "That's the true victory, isn't it? Not just freedom from chains, but freedom from believing we deserve them." As night settled over our ranch, I silently thanked my sister for leading me to this moment, for ensuring that her suffering had not been in vain, for showing me that even in our darkest hours, we might become a light for others to find their way home. In the harshest landscapes of our history, humanity has always found ways to cultivate hope. The auction blocks and iron chains represent our darkest chapters, yet they've never succeeded in breaking the human spirit completely. When one person recognizes the humanity in another, sees beyond the price tags and property claims, healing becomes possible. True freedom isn't merely the absence of physical restraints. It blooms in the presence of choice, in the sacred right to determine one's own path. The most profound act of resistance against cruelty isn't always dramatic vengeance, but rather the quiet, persistent building of something beautiful where there was once only pain. Justice matters deeply, but perhaps what matters more is what we create after justice has been served. Safe havens where broken souls can remember who they were meant to be. Families formed not through blood, but through choice and compassion. Communities that stand as living monuments to resilience. In the end, our greatest triumph over those who would diminish us is to live fully, to love deeply, and to ensure that the suffering of the past guides us toward a more humane future. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel for more tales of resilience and redemption that illuminate the enduring power of the human spirit.